Salutations, respected viewers. This is George from Ireland. Well, this video is about how Trump crumples. So just yesterday, President Trump gave in on the budget, at least temporarily. So why? Well, don't for a minute think that he was moved by compassion. This man is noted for his complete lack of empathy. And he was 17% behind in the opinion polls. So his approval rating was dreadful, the lowest of his presidency so far, and that's saying something. Some airports were in danger of closing because air traffic controllers were calling in sick. Some of the security officers who search your bags and so on were calling in sick. The economy was reeling, particularly in the Washington, D.C. area, where a lot of federal employees live. The courts and the FBI were no longer going to be able to function properly because, okay, they were getting their salaries, judges and FBI agents, but the money they needed for investigations or for various hearings was not going to be there. There was going to be a huge backlog. Tax returns were due in. How was that going to function? There was mounting chaos, and he was taking flack from within his own party. Now, a few brave and wise Republicans have been against this moronic shutdown right from the get-go, but more of them were moving over that way. So Trump waved the white flag, and then he hailed it as a victory. So yet more effrontery when it comes to the truth. It's like, oh, well, you know, truth is false. Falsehood is truth, or whatever it says in the Ministry of Truth. So he's been savaged by Ann Coulter as being the biggest wimp since George H.W. Bush. You may remember that George W. Bush, when he was elected president, George H.W. Bush, in 1988 said, "Read my lips, no new taxes." And then he reneged on that pledge, and that helped cost him the 1992 election. There's been pointed out about Trump and his nonsensical wall, that this was a key plank of his presidential campaign, something distinctive, something where the Democrats weren't willing to follow, helped him get elected, but it may doom him at the next election. I don't write him off just yet. Be too early to write his political obituary. So he invested so much hope, so much of his prestige in this, talking about it almost incessantly recently, that is obviously a calamity for him to drop the idea, and he still hasn't dropped it. If he'd quietly dropped it at the beginning of his presidency, he might have been able to get away with it. People might have largely forgotten about it by the time of the next presidential election. And this is often the way he does it. He overpromises, he underdelivers. Look at many of his madcap, cataclysmic business failures. Think of some of the other flagrant falsehoods he's told. And examples of his braggadocio, saying he knows more about ISIS than the generals. This from Trump, who never reads anything. That he has the best words and the best people, which is why he's had to sack so many of his appointees, or they've left. That he could have risen to the top of the military. When has he ever shown athleticism, discipline, physical courage, any of the virtues that the military would need? That he would have run into Parkland High School to confront the shooter, even if he, Trump, didn't have a weapon. That he's a very stable person, and on and on and on. So these were blatant lies about the wall. No impact assessment was done. There was no attempt to figure out the cost when he was making this electoral pledge. Is this practical? Is it deliverable? No. He was making these ridiculous promises. And incidentally, as I've said elsewhere, I think that the wall actually is not the worst idea. If it were practicable, if it were going to be cost effective and all the rest of it, which it isn't. So Trump has agreed to fund the government for a further 3 weeks and give back pay to all of those federal workers who've been out of pocket for about 5 weeks. They're long overdue. Why should they work without pay? We're all told that profit motive is everything, you know. There's mammon worship there by many people in America, so if you're not earning money, you're worthless. You're only worth how much money you have. So they should obviously go off and get other jobs, but this could easily happen again, so don't work for the federal government. It's one of the risks you take. So Trump says there could be a second shutdown in 3 weeks if he's still not given the wall. Well, why would the shutdown work a second time when it didn't work the first time? We know he gives in now. He's proven that. His other option he's mused about is to declare a state of emergency. But if it isn't an emergency, declare it now. You should have declared it the day you inaugurated. That's what emergency is. It's urgent. It's getting worse by the hour. So it's blatantly not an emergency because it's not exacerbating every day. And he's just misusing the term and indeed these presidential prerogatives in order to try and circumvent Congress, which won't vote for what he wants. I thought there would be a good compromise. The Democrats could say, okay, we'll spend a tiny bit of money on a commission to examine the possibility of the wall, the feasibility of constructing it. How long would it take? What legislation would we need to compulsory purchase the land? How much is it going to cost? All the rest of it. What would it do to the environment? Now, Trump may have sounded the death knell to his chances of re-election, but as I say, I think it would be rash and premature to be sure he's going to lose. He still has time to recover if he focuses on other issues. But you see how much of a flip-flopper he is on North Korea, on Syria, on Afghanistan, on guns. Remember, before the presidential election, after Parkland, he said he was in favor of taking guns away from people and then doing legal process afterwards. How about that, gun nuts? So he doesn't believe in gun rights. The Confederate flag, 2015, saying it ought to be removed from all public spaces. Well, when it came to a statue of I think it was General Lee in Charlottesville, forgive me, he changed his tune on that one. All right, it was a Confederate statue, not a flag, but the symbolism is the same. On whether he's had any dealings with Russia, he's obviously contradicted himself all over the place. So you see how erratic he is, how predictably unpredictable he is. Very volatile character. Playing games with people's jobs and people's livelihoods. And if he really cared about national security, he wouldn't be defunding the FBI as he had been. And obviously imperiling people going through the airports, jeopardizing everything. Anyway, he could have ordered the military to feed these federal government workers and their families, to provide them free medical care. But oh no, he doesn't care about them at all. There we are. I know they're often a whipping boy for some of the Republican Party. The overweening power of Washington, which they don't do anything to slim down, really. So there we are. Will we have another shutdown in 3 weeks? I suspect not, because this one has been a disaster for him, because his ratings fell almost every day that this went on. And by having caved into pressure, he's been weak as well as unsuccessful and blah, blah, blah. So I think he'll probably try the other option, unfortunately. Will he get away with that through the courts? That's difficult. I don't think so. I could be wrong. Time will tell.